Well, everyone, it's time for us to go and take a look at the Apple Watch Series 6 and see how this particular Apple Watch holds up in 2025. Now, number one, there are some really big things to keep in mind here with this particular watch. It came out back in 2020. And the thing I like about Apple Watches is that you can basically go ahead and buy these watches and still have a really good time with them, even if you go through and buy a pretty old Apple Watch. This thing is 5 years old, and some people might think this one is pretty old, but I'm using an Apple Watch Series 4 that came out 2 years even before this one, and I'm still actually having a pretty decent time with it as well. So kind of keep that in mind. Now we'll take a look at this whole entire video throughout, or this watch throughout this whole entire video, but if you do want to pick up this watch or some other watches that I would recommend buying this year, links will be down in the description below. You can get them from there, and you can help support the channel at the exact same time. Now, starting off with the outside of this watch, it basically came out in two different sizes. So it came out in a 44mm size or a 40mm size. So that was kind of one of those things to keep in mind here, because you could go through and basically use this watch in two different ways. So I did like that watch a lot of that, because you could just go through and use it in a few different ways like that. This watch gave you a pretty good size display to 1000 nits of brightness, which I thought was pretty nice. You're getting two buttons on the side of this watch too. It was the digital crown and that side button, which I did enjoy. And then you were also getting that wireless charging pad. So that was also something that was pretty nice there too. You could go through and basically, use these buttons as you normally would. You can charge up this watch as you normally would. And I thought that was also another pretty cool thing going on when it came down to this watch as well. Now with the bands, you could go through and you can swap out the bands with other bands. And I've always liked the way you could swap out Apple Watch bands. And it's actually pretty good. So I did kind of enjoy that watch a lot because of that particular situation as well. You're still getting pretty good build quality. The newer watches are better and they're nicer, and they are giving you a little bit more capability, like with brighter displays and with better build quality and less bezel. But still, it's a pretty good looking watch, and I still think it looks pretty good when it comes down to it. Now, when it comes down to the chipset inside, it is giving you the Apple S6 chip inside of it, which is still pretty fast. It's still pretty powerful. There's a few things to keep in mind though with this type of watch though. Number one, you have to remember that with the Apple Watch Series 6, this watch, if you're coming from no watches, this thing has a bunch of features built in inside of it. And that is something I actually do love a lot about my watches. These things, if I didn't have a single Apple Watch, this thing would be giving me a really good type of experience. And that's something that I like a lot about these, because you can go through, buy them, and still have a really exceptional time with them. On the other side, there are a few features that the newest watches have that this one doesn't. Like I mentioned before, like things like the brighter displays, if you're going for the Ultra, that one's going to be a really good watch, but this one's still very good for the most part too. There's not really too much to complain about here when it comes down to it. And if you're coming from no watch or even another Apple Watch that's older, you're still getting a lot of capability inside of this watch too. You're still getting very good capability when it comes down to checking your notifications, when you're going through and checking some other things, if you're wanting to take phone calls, especially when it comes down to the health tracking, things like tracking your steps or tracking your heart rate, anything like that at all, you're going to be getting a really good time with inside of this watch too. And I also had a pretty good time when it came down to even like battery life. Like these devices still hold up really well when it comes down to that battery life department. And I do think that is in and of itself another really important thing to keep in mind here too. A few things to keep in mind though, this is an Apple Watch, so it only works with Apple devices. It does not work with Android phones natively. You could always buy the cellular model and have it used like as a separate device, but I wouldn't really recommend that either. This is a standalone Apple Watch that you can use with or without an iPhone, but you need an iPhone if you're trying to pair it up with another device. But in my opinion, I like the Apple Watch Series 6. I think it's still worth buying in 2025, considering that I'm still using an Apple Watch Series 4. But at the same time, there might be some other Apple Watches I'd recommend more so than this thing. I think the Apple Watch Series 7 is actually a pretty good upgrade, and I'd probably recommend buying that one when it comes down to it. But in terms of that, that's kind of how I feel. If you have any other thoughts or questions, please let me know in the comment section below. Hit the like button, that would mean so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. More importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.